Okay, this is the Build 41 positive trait tier list. I was gonna try and fit all of them into one tier list, including the negative traits, but there's too many, I think, for it to be reasonably covered. There's one of these lists already out there, but I think I disagree. I remember watching when I first started out, but as I've played more and more, I've started to disagree with a lot of the placements. So I guess let's get started. First one is Adrenaline Junkie, I believe this is. This used to be a really good trait because you used to be able to take it with claustrophobic or agoraphobic, and then you'd kind of have just like super speed all the time, basically. But at this point, now that the devs have nerfed it, it's probably a D tier trait. Let me go ahead and make this F tier, actually. Because Panic really, for those of you that don't know, Panic really does destroy your combat capabilities. Next up is Fishing. I'll place Fishing probably in the C tier for now, I believe. So fishing is pretty good. It's kind of boring. It's not as boring as like foraging, but it is a decent source of food. My only qualm with it is that trapping seems to be a better source of food and seems to be less time consuming. Also, there is a little bit to be mentioned about the philosophy of not going skill traits, like stuff that you can grind in game, and focusing a lot more on traits that you can't grind in game, like dextrous and like fast learner, stuff like that, stuff that you can't get in game no matter how long you stay. But that's something for more advanced players to consider. Next we have, I believe this is, I can't tell if this is fit or athletic. I'm gonna go ahead and say this is fit. This is the one for 6 points. It gives you +1 fitness. This is probably like an A to B tier trait. If you're not playing with the fitness and strength books, it's probably an A tier trait. The only thing about this is its counterpart, athletic, is just better because you get 2 fitness for 10 points as opposed to 1 fitness for 6 points. Baseball player, I'm probably going to put in the B tier, A tier, B tier. If you're not going to go guns, I think long blunt's one of the best things to go. And this one's actually kind of slow to level. Like I was talking about how you maybe don't take skill points for stuff that you can level, but leveling your weapons is pretty annoying. So long blunt, B tier. Brave, A tier. For 4 points, I mean, Panic really destroys your combat capabilities. I take this pretty much every game. And especially if you're going to deal with large hordes or you're going to go guns, you basically need this or desensitized from veteran. So, okay, Brave. I almost want to put in the S tier, but I'll put it in the S tier for now. We'll see as more stuff comes up how it's shaking out. It might rebalance stuff. Okay, the next one is Brawler. I believe this is +1 axe, +1 long blunt for 6 points. It's pretty good, but it's kind of like a worse counterpart of baseball player because the good part's long blunt. And axe is good. The only problem with the axe is that you kind of waste your tools for getting wood. But outside of that, axe is fine. This has to go below baseball player. I'd almost put this down in D tier. I pretty much never take this trait. Let's say like C tier. Pretty much B tier and up is traits that I take most of the time, and then C tier and down is traits that I pretty much never take, or I've tried at one point and didn't really enjoy them. Cat's eyes. Depending on your darkness settings and your monitor brightness and stuff, but still, this is like an A tier because it's something you can't grind out. It's only 2 points. Gives you a 20% vision boost at night. Especially if you're on like a server or something that has sprinters at night and stuff like that. This is really useful. Even if you don't, this is pretty good. I wouldn't take it over these, but it's up there for sure. Cook. This is like D tier. Like cooking's so easy to level, especially with the cooking show. And the fact that you have to eat anyways. So you should be leveling your cooking anyways. Dextrous. It's somewhere between like low S tier and high A tier. I take it pretty much every time because at this point, not taking it just feels too slow. Again, it's something you can't grind out, so that's something to consider. I guess I'll put this in S tier for now. Eagle-eyed. I believe, is this one. This one has a wider field of view. Field of view is not that important, in my opinion. I mean, what really matters more is stuff like keen hearing. I'm actually gonna go ahead and place keen hearing right now in A tier, because like getting snuck up from behind, you can only see like a couple feet behind you. This doubles the radius, but with your vision, I think this gives you just a wider like cone, a wider field of view. And that's something you don't really need. I think it's hardly noticeable. I'm gonna go ahead and put it down in D tier. I'm actually gonna go ahead and move. No, I won't move Adrenaline Junkie down. But like, Adrenaline Junkie really only works if you're gonna run and you're not gonna fight. Fast Healer. This is like a C tier trait. I wouldn't really take it because it doesn't actually change the severity of illnesses and injuries, if I remember correctly. But it does make your injuries heal faster. But the thing is, you're almost never gonna die from your injury not healing fast enough unless it's something like a broken leg or yeah, I mean basically like something that's like really debilitating, like a broken leg. You might want to have this, but outside of that, it really doesn't change much. It's like it seems much nicer than it is, in my opinion. Fast Learner, S tier trait. I mean, it makes the whole game so much easier. This whole game is like kind of a skill grind, at a certain point, at least in certain aspects. So, like after you take your negative traits, take Fast Learner and then add on everything else. Next we have, what is this? Fast Reader. If you don't play with a fast reading mod, which I recommend you do, unless you're really just like reading while you're AFK or something. If you're playing on vanilla, which I guess this is under the assumption of, this is like maybe a high C tier. Like it depends how much you hate reading. If you're somebody who like doesn't want to go AFK to like go do some chores while your character reads and stuff like that, I guess this helps a lot. But a lot of people play with either Cat's faster reading mod or the literacy mod, and both of those make it so you don't really need fast reader. Okay. Up next is, this is the first aid trait, right? It took me a second. I don't know why it took me a little bit to remember what it was, but I think this is the first aid trait, the one that gives you like +1 first aid in the beginning. This is kind of buns. You can level. Okay, if you really wanted to level your first aid, you could literally just take your shoes off and walk over glass, and then your feet will bleed out like really rapidly, and you'll just sit there like patching your bandages and removing glass shards and disinfecting it. And you're gonna grind up your first aid really quick. Like first aid's really grindable compared to some other ones. I might even put this in the F tier. There's almost no reason to actually go, unless you're playing like multiplayer and you guys are kind of doing like roles where like somebody will be like a doctor and they'll patch everybody up and they'll be good at it. Then this kind of like makes more sense. But in most cases, this is like an F tier trait. Next we have, oh, this is first aid. Sorry. So, or not first aid. Sorry. Former scout. Next we have former scout. Former scout is +1 first aid, +1 foraging. It took me a second because I never take this one. Even though it's not terrible, it kind of suffers from the same thing as this. Like, why get first aid? Foraging is nice though. I will place former scout in, I'll say D tier. It's better. It's a better use of your points than first aid because like you get foraging and it's only 6 points compared to first aid, which is 4. But it's pretty down there. Gardener, you know how to make the cures, and I think you start out with +1 farming. This is also down there in the D tier. I mean, you can figure out how to make the cures. I mean, really, it's just finding the magazines. And the +1 farming isn't really going to do too much to change your gameplay. So again, unless you're like really planning, I mean, the XP boost is kind of nice that you get from going something like this. But unless you're like really planning on going heavy on farming for some reason, like really absurdly heavy, like you're role playing for a group of friends and you're like the main guy who does everything. Other than that, I'd steer clear. Next we have graceful. Graceful is 60% footsteps, sound radius, and 90% chance to trip while running, vaulting, whatever. This one's good, kind of. This one's pretty good because getting alerting a zombie by sound is a lot more annoying than alerting a zombie by line of sight. I feel like it happens way more often. That being said, probably wouldn't go this unless you're going really heavy on like a sneaking build. It doesn't give you any skill points, so it is actually like the 60% footstep sound is something you can't really achieve. Actually, maybe you can do it through light-footed. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure light-footed does the same thing. But it takes a lot of light-footed grinding to get. It takes like at least a couple levels to get to the point of graceful. I'd put it in the C tier. I may need to rebalance this list a little bit. There's, I guess we'll see what's to come. Actually, you know what? No, there's still a lot of good traits on table that are gonna end up on top. Okay, gymnast. This one gives +1 nimble, +1 light-footed. It's good. Gymnast is good. For those of you who don't know, light-footed makes your footsteps create less noise, and nimble is basically when you're kiting zombies, like you're walking backwards while facing them and swinging, it makes that speed faster. And once you level up your nimble enough, you'll get to a point where if you're not playing with sprinters and stuff, you should be able to perpetually just back up and swing. So gymnast is good. Getting the XP bonuses in light-footed and nimble is really convenient. I'd probably put this next to baseball player. Next is handy. I'd probably also put this in B tier. Handy is a B tier trait. Carpentry is probably the most important crafting skill that you actually get access to and that you can grind. It's easy to grind. So okay, you know what? I'm actually gonna move this down. I'm gonna move this down to C tier because you don't need handy. You can grind out carpentry without it pretty easily. But the maintenance from it is nice. It's tough. It's tough. I'm gonna put it in the B tier, in the low B tier, just for the sake of balancing out the list. But +1 carpentry, +1 maintenance, increases building speed, and +100 HP to all buildings you make. The maintenance is really nice. Your weapons are gonna break less often. You're gonna be able to, make more use without having to repair them as often. The carpentry is nice just because you basically need to get up like rain collectors and everything going by like day 14 by the time the power goes out. So depending on your time settings, you don't have a lot of time. Having carpentry, having like any kind of carpentry skill boost is really convenient just for the sake of getting there. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about carpentry. Low B tier. Next is herbalist. Okay. This one's able to find herbal medicines, make poultices from them, and identify poisonous wild food. I personally don't go... Okay, so in my personal opinion, foraging is kind of boring. I think the system should get a revamp to make it more interesting to play. Because at this point, it's kind of just walking simulator. I think there's a scavenging mod that makes it slightly better, but it's basically just walking simulator and staring at the ground, which is not that fun. But if you're somebody who likes to go foraging, and I'm not knocking you at all, I think herbalist is good. But for the general player, for like the average player, it's probably like I want to say a D tier trait. I feel like there are going to be people who disagree with me on this maybe, but I'm gonna place it down there to D tier. Okay, next is hiker. +1 foraging, +1 trapping. This one's kind of okay. It's not great on so if you ever play on a multiplayer server, usually they'll rebalance this trait to add fishing to it as well. So then it has all three, and then it's kind of good. And then they also tag on that you have a little bit more endurance. But as it stands in the vanilla mode, +1 foraging, +1 trapping, it's all right. You could really ask for a lot more, though, in my opinion. So I'm going to put it... because foraging and trapping isn't terrible, I'm going to put it here. I'm actually going to move herbalist to, like, here. And I'm actually going to move Eagle-Eyed up to C tier. It's a really low C tier, because I don't think it's a good trait. But, like I said, it's a skill that you can't grind, which to some people is really valuable. Like, in my opinion, once you get advanced enough and you get to a certain point where you're not really dying to, like, bad luck and, like, mistakes, and, like, you're surviving more than, like, a month or something, traits that you can't grind out become more and more valuable as you start to max your skills and stuff. Traits like dextrous and, like, brave and like traits like that become more and more valuable as you're starting to max out a lot of the stuff. So like if you go like carpentry traits, you can max out carpentry, and then your carpentry traits are basically useless. Whereas these traits will never be useless. Okay, next up we have Hunter. Hunter gives you +1 aiming, +1 short blade, +1 sneaking, +1 trapping, and effects search mode. Hunter's good. Hunter's good. Short blade is kind of annoying to use in my opinion, but it's not terrible. The aiming from it is obviously good. The aiming bonus, it makes you basically, if you want to use guns, you need to have some kind of trait or something usually, unless you're gonna grind it out really slowly otherwise, and it's gonna be really ineffective. So if you want to go, if you want to like have some sort of gunplay in your playthrough, and you're not doing it through a job, which I think is better, like doing it through like police officer or something, then this is decent. You know, it gives you +1 trapping, +1 sneaking. Those are both useful. You're going to be trapping for food maybe if you're not farming. Sneaking, you know, everybody uses at some point. It's pretty good. So it's not bad. I will give Hunter, even though I myself personally never go, because if I ever want to go gunplay, I end up going police officer, or there's some modded ones that add it, but still, I'd prefer to go through a job, but this is a decent alternative. It's actually better than I remember. I didn't even remember that it gave +1 sneaking. Okay, next up we have okay, I'm gonna come back to this one. I'm gonna do nutritionist for now while I remember what it is. Okay, nutritionist, F tier. Nutrition in this game works pretty similarly to real life. If you have any idea of how nutrition works in real life, like I mean, just like, you know, like meat has protein, you know, processed foods will make you fat quickly, like stuff like that. If you have like any kind of like basic food knowledge, as you should, because you eat food, you shouldn't need this. So I'm gonna, for that reason, it is the second tier, the second trait in the F tier. Okay. Next we have, I think this is restful sleeper. Oh, wakeful. Wakeful. This is what this is. Wakeful's good. I end up mostly playing on multiplayer servers, so I don't get to experience the sleep mechanic very often. But back when I did, it's nice. It doesn't. I feel like it's not a game changer, but it is nice. And like I said, it is a trait you can't grind out. So low C tier for that reason. This is strong stomach, I believe. It basically makes it so, or iron gut. Sorry. So 50% chance of food illness. I'm gonna put this is a D tier trait. I'm gonna explain why. Actually, this might even be an F tier. This is an F tier trait. The only way to get food illness really is to eat rotten food, and there should be so much food that if you're playing on single player, even if you're playing on multiplayer, I played on servers like on locally hosted servers with like 10 people, and there is enough food to keep everybody going. There's never a reason to really eat rotten food. Just throw your rotten food in the compost. That's pretty much it. You never have a reason to take iron gut. Like, even this just reduces your chance for food illness. You should not be consuming anything that gives you should never be taking a chance on food illness. Illness is one of the most annoying things in this game. Never take a chance on food illness. Never eat rotten food. But because you're never eating rotten food, you never need to go iron gut. F tier. Okay, next up is thick-skinned, which multiplies the chance of not being injured by a zombie attack by 1.3%. Additionally, alters the chance of clothes being damaged by walking through trees to 1 in 13. Okay, this one is okay. I feel like it's a little bit of a new player trap, just a tiny bit, but it makes sense if you're a new player who is getting maybe unlucky. You're not at the point where you're not really getting unlucky and stuff anymore. Then this could have some use for you. But this is basically a chance modifier, which to most people who play Zomboid, you know, past like 200 hours, is kind of considered, it's chance modifiers are slightly looked down upon because they're basically a luck buff, and luck will only take you so far. Like eventually, even if you have thick skin, you still have that chance. If you're continually making mistakes to get yourself in a position where you're getting bit and injured, which most people still do, granted, you will eventually just become, you will just get unlucky and you will get bit, you'll get zombified, and same thing will happen to you. So in my opinion, this is a C tier trait. This is a low C tier trait. It's a luck buff, and luck buffs are good if you're like really starting out. You know, your first like maybe 100 hours or so. You know, this could see more use, but there's a lot of arguments to be made for to skip out on thick skin and instead take something like strong, for example. That's gonna like make you swing harder. It's gonna be able to make you push the zombies off you easier. It's gonna be able to let you carry more weight, which will let you run from them easier. You know what I mean? It's better to take stuff that will prevent you from getting into that situation in the first place than taking what is essentially a luck buff. Okay, next one. I believe this is Tailor, or something like that. Tailoring's good. Tailoring slept on a little bit. It's pretty good actually, but it's debatable whether you actually need a level for it. I mean, the thread for it is kind of annoying. I'm gonna put it in high D tier. It's like you could take it, especially if you like are gonna really focus on tailoring. Especially if you have one person in the group who really goes hard on tailoring and they take this. If you're playing with like friends on a server or something. But other than that, yeah, it's down there. It's in D tier. Next up we have Strong. Strong is S tier. Strong is up there with Athletic and Fast Learner. Yeah, I almost want to move. I'm actually going to move Brave down to A tier. And then keep Dextrous up there at the bottom of S tier. Strong is insanely good. In my opinion, Strong is better than Athletic by a little bit. But, you know, it's really just personal preference. Well, I'm going one of these two, especially Strong, will feel completely different than how it feels currently. Like if you're somebody who has never gone Strong before and you go Strong for the first time, the game feels completely different. You can carry like 50% more weight. You push zombies down on like the first try as long as you're not tired. And strength is something that's really annoying to grind out. So Strong, S tier. Now it's miniature form, Stout. Stout gives you +1 strength for 6 points. And it's basically like the ratio of points to strength is worse than Strong. So by its nature, it's just a slightly worse version of Strong. If you're like budgeting, you know, and you can't afford Strong and you want to pick up some strength, you know, Stout's good. I've done that. You just have to, you know, come to terms with the fact that you're being slightly inefficient with your points just because Strong exists. And okay, this one is, I believe, Runner. I believe it gives you either, I think it gives you +1 sprinting is what I believe it gives you. Sprinting's good. I'm gonna put it in like middle of the pack C tier. If you're playing with sprinters enabled, which is not the vanilla setting, then this probably climbs up a little bit, but as it stands, sprinting, it's good. It's good, but if you're not playing with sprinters, you don't really need it. You shouldn't have moments where you are really sprinting. You should be able, like, if you're not playing with sprinters or joggers, which are the vanilla settings, you should be able to walk away from zombies at pretty much every point. Unless like you like really mess up and you need like a moment where you like sprint, which, you know, everybody does once in a while. You should be able to just outwalk them, outjog them. You shouldn't be sprinting that often, but it is convenient. And if you play with harder settings, this goes up. Speed Demon, F tier. F tier. This might surprise a lot of, like, maybe not a lot, but this might surprise some people, because if I have one trait left, and if I have 1 point left, one positive point left for positive traits, I skip Speed Demon entirely. I skip over it and I just play the game without Speed Demon. Speed Demon is really kind of annoying to play with. First of all, it's really easy to mess up your car in Zomboid. Unless you're somebody who, for some reason, is really good at the pretty, like the driving mechanics are they're pretty rigid. You know what I mean? So, like, maybe if you're extremely talented and you're perceiving stuff as the car is moving really fast and you're able to, like, swerve out of the way, even at, like, 150 miles per hour, because the car goes up to, like, 120 normally. So if you, I don't know, if you're like, maybe if you have godlike reactions and stuff, maybe this could be a better trait for you. But I feel like most people find that they crash their car enough as it is that you don't really need the speed boost. They go fast enough that you don't need the speed boost. The speed boost, like, is probably nice on really long trips between cities, but even then you're like still dodging zombies, dodging car wrecks, etc., etc. I feel like this is almost asking to mess up your car. And the loudness boost when you reverse, it's like 200%. It like basically blasts your engine the second you reverse, even like the second you tap the reverse key, which is super loud, super obnoxious. F tier trait. I don't know if it's below these. I'd probably put it above these two, but it's definitely down there. That's definitely in the F trait. And now that I'm speaking of it, I remember what this trait is. This is inconspicuous. This is the opposite of conspicuous. Inconspicuous is good, kind of. You know what? I take that back. Inconspicuous is kind of bad because it doesn't affect the sound. It doesn't affect. It's not graceful. It doesn't affect how light-footed you are. It only affects the radius at which zombies see you. It's basically a luck. So basically, when a zombie's in your field of view, you have like a % chance to trigger it, and this basically lowers that chance. The reason I say this trait isn't good is because, like I said earlier, you're gonna be getting messed up a lot more from sound and like sound cues and triggering zombies by sounds than you are by vision. And at the same time, I'm a big fan of the conspicuous trait, which is actually the opposite of this, which gives zombies a slightly higher chance to detect you, which basically makes it so you can clear out hordes. If there's a horde and you don't have if you don't have conspicuous and you're just on vanilla settings, or you have inconspicuous, it's really hard to draw away zombies from the horde without pulling the whole thing. If you have conspicuous, basically what'll happen is zombies will from that horde will slowly flow in at you, like 1 or 2 at a time, as they start to slowly spot you, and you can deal with them. You can thin out the horde. So I really like conspicuous, and by proxy, I don't really like inconspicuous. So I'm gonna put it in low C tier because I respect what it can do for you. I suppose if you're like really going hard on the sneaking and stuff, but conspicuous is such a good negative trait that I never even get the option to take this trait. Okay, moving on. Light eaters. I think this is minus 25% hunger, I believe. This is probably F tier. There's no reason to take your points on this. Not that low F tier, but it's pretty low. Like, you should have enough food that you should be fine. If you're getting annoyed by how often your character has to eat, then maybe lower the time control that you play on. Like, move it from 1 hour per day to 2 hours per day, which is what a lot of people play on. But I play on 1 hour, and even on normal hunger settings, like, this is fine. You never need this. This is kind of just a waste of points compared to a lot of the stuff up here. Low thirst, also F tier. Yeah, it's F tier. You don't need low thirst. Honestly, high thirst is so good that, again, I never even see this trait in my selection menu. But basically, thirst in this game is basically an inventory debuff because your character auto drinks. So as long as if you have high thirst and you keep like 2 water bottles in your inventory, you'll always be covered basically. If you have low thirst, by proxy, you get a slight inventory buff, right? Because you don't need to carry those water bottles. That's basically all it is. You don't need to carry the water bottles. But at that point, if you're just getting it for the inventory buff, get something else. Get strong, get stout. I guess those are the only ones without the modded ones. But get something that will give you more inventory room without going low thirst. If anything, just go high thirst. High thirst, then take like strong or something, and then you have a ton of inventory room. You just have to dedicate a tiny bit of it to your water bottles. Okay, next. We're getting in there. We're almost done. Next is Lucky. So this depends. Lucky's really good if you're playing alone, and really bad if you're playing with other people. If you're playing with other people, the way it works is whoever renders the chunk, whether they have lucky or unlucky or whatever, that's what's going to be played out for the loot in the chunk. But so if you're solo, it's good. It's really good. It's also a trait you can't get by skill points or whatever. So it's like a high A tier, low S tier trait. If you're solo, which this list is kind of under the presumption that you're solo. But if you're with people, this is like a C tier trait. Like if you're playing on a multiplayer server, you're not going to be getting a lot of the loot because you're not going to be rendering the chunks by yourself most of the time. Amateur mechanic. It's all right. I mean, it's good for giving you the mechanics skill, but like you don't need all the recipes and stuff that it gives to you. I'm going to put it in low C tier again. Because like I said, you don't really need it. I'm actually going to move up past healer. It's not great, but just to kind of... No, I'm going to keep it faster. Sorry. Okay, amateur mechanic. Yeah, you don't really need it. You like it's only +1 mechanics. Mechanics is slightly annoying to level, so that part of it is kind of nice if you like playing with cars. You have a lot of modded cars or something. Maybe this is more useful to you. But you end up getting the magazines for commercial and performance and standard repairs pretty quickly in most playthroughs, so this isn't that necessary. Next we have organized plus 30% inventory space. This is, if you're playing by yourself, this is like a B tier trait, which this tier list is under the assumption of. If you're playing with other people, avoid taking the organized or disorganized traits because they basically make containers function in a weird way where you can't access them. If you have disorganized, like the negative version of this, you basically can't access them. You can't like put stuff in them because you have because you're disorganized. And then unorganized, other people can't put stuff into the containers because you're overfilling them. Like it only applies to whatever you have. So if you're solo, it's good. Multiplayer, it's a lot worse. Next we have outdoorsman. Minus 99% chance of catching a cold. This is this is another low C tier trait. I mean, you just don't need to catch a cold. Just like don't get absolutely soaked. If you get moist, you're fine. If you get sweaty, whatever, you're fine. If you even get wet, you're fine. But just do not get like completely absolutely soaked, and then like this doesn't matter. And last we have resilient, which basically makes you less prone to disease. This basically is the opposite of prone to illness. This is a little bit deceptive because resilient makes it kind of sound like you're like resilient to maybe zombie disease, or you're resilient to like, I don't know, food illness. But the only thing this makes you resilient to is getting a cold. The only way you really get a cold is by standing outside wet and freezing temperatures. And as long as you don't do that, you'll be fine. There's no reason to take this. Resilience, another F tier trait. Okay, so I mean, this has gone long enough. Thank you guys for bearing with me, and good luck.